Tonight, hopes of a market for cast-off coal from Ohai. We explore Fiordland through the pages of a new book. And the Otago rugby team launches into its 1989 campaign. Good evening. Honesty may have proved the best policy for the 290 Dunedin shoppers who rewrote cheques stolen in this month's big supermarket robbery. Police have recovered all of the 500 stolen cheques, which were found under a bush in central Dunedin, but they haven't yet recovered any of the stolen cash. The cheques, totalling $41,000, have been returned to the supermarket. The sale of 7,000 tonnes of P-grade coal to India may mean a shot in the arm for Ohai. The trial shipment's being loaded at Bluff, and it's hoped further exports of P-grade and coal fines may follow. Peter Cruikshank reports.
The sale to India came together very quickly, and the P-grade coal was railed to the island harbour for loading. A combination of plant was assembled to load the ship. The conveyor system, normally used for wheat and wood chips, moved nearly 500 tonnes of coal an hour, and it's hoped the whole consignment will be away by tomorrow morning. In India, it'll be used in the making of steel alloys. The only disadvantage is that grading the Ps creates more fines. So far, there's no sale for those. Coalcorp has 250,000 tonnes stockpiled at Ohai, but it's hoped that the trial shipment of Ps will prove exporting both grades is a practical option.
The refit of the Cook Strait Ferry Arahanga is about halfway through, and with only 3 weeks to go before she sails, the renovators are working full steam ahead. Sims Engineering is doing its best on the Arahanga in the hope it'll pick up the contract for the next inter-islander refit, the Arahura. Kim Haring has been looking at progress.
The whitewash of the Arahanga isn't just a paint job, it's a change of image from bow to stern, from major structural changes to salmon pink vinyl on the walls of the new lounge area.
The whole idea is to upgrade the old railway ferry image from a green ferry that sort of had the greasy pie and cold tea up to a cruise ship image.
The 80 workers haven't stopped for a day off since they started 3 weeks ago, and over Easter they'll only take Sunday off. It's a race to have her ready for an open day on April the 9th and to sail back into duty on April 14th. Tenders have already been called for the refit of the larger Arahura, and 11 companies have shown interest, including 6 from overseas. Sims is hoping this renovation will impress Sea Rail. If so, inter-islanders may become as much a feature of the Dunedin cityscape as they are of Wellington.
Lumsden people have decided to take on New Zealand Post. They're angry about the closure of their post office, which means they'll have to travel to Winton for postal facilities. They've started a petition, and they say if they have the resources, they'll take out an injunction. Invercargill's forestry operation has been boosted by a sale of logs to China. The high price is for thinnings, which would be almost unsaleable elsewhere. One advantage is that the Chinese want logs which aren't too big, so they can be easily handled. Peter Cruikshank reports.
At Sandy Point, west of Invercargill, the council's converting its stand of trees into a production forest, which in time will be able to sustain logging. At the moment, it's spacing the best trees 6 metres from one another so they'll grow fat.
And this is a really good log. This is the one that will stay, and this is the thinnings that will go to China, and it'll be cut up into short lengths, which is what the Chinese are after.
The buyers are after the little logs, 4, 6 and 8 metre lengths, and they're paying only a fraction less than the Japanese and the Koreans pay for large logs.
This is a really good operation that we can get away all these small logs and return a very good price to the grower.
The 20,000 tonnes for China will leave for Guangzhou in April, earning around $2 million for the operation.
Milford is undoubtedly one of New Zealand's most beautiful spots, but although many books have dedicated chapters to its wonders, it's only recently that one's concentrated solely on the area. Veteran climber Jack Eade has written and published a book called Mountain Men of Milford, which explores places off the beaten track. Sally Pears caught up with him in Dunedin.
Jack Eade has always kept a record of his journeys through the maze of peaks in Milford. He was first published in 1941 and has written so much since then he decided to combine all his work in one book. The book contains more than his own exploits. He goes back in time to write about the early explorers, sailors and Maori attracted to the area. It's also full of anecdotes of his many climbs and companions and his feelings about the landscape.
In retrospect, we were very privileged to be surveying such a superb view. For my part, the cramped discomfort soon gained dominance over the feeling of awe conveyed to us by this unique panorama. As I munched my summit sandwiches, I realised that I had had a very eventful quarter-century in the Milford Sound Mountains to reflect on.
But he manages to slip in a little humour.
The sandflies lived up to their reputation of hospitality by inviting us to dinner, we realising that they planned to consume us for the first course. As I was trying to flick some of these hungry monsters from my plate of stew, Rodder remarked, "Eat the little buggers, they've got protein in them."
Although retired from climbing himself, Jack Eade takes tramping classes. He speaks highly of the country's many clubs, but says he sometimes feels a little disappointed that there are some areas of fjordland not yet tackled.
I'm disappointed that there are not more climbers going into the Darrans and the Fjordland area because there's still a lot of new routes to be climbed.
His love affair with fjordland hasn't stopped him climbing in other areas, and he hasn't ruled out the possibility of another book.
Well, my wife's out of earshot, so I'd say I'd like to because I've got enough material for the Aspiring area and Mount Cook and Arthur's Pass areas. I would like to, but time's getting on.
Whether he writes another book or not, Jack Eade will always return to Milford.
You can't take the memory away of that particular sensation when you turn the corner and your heart skips a beat and you see these peaks rearing out of the water. I've been twice to the Norwegian fjords and they've got a long way to go before they'll match fjord in Milford.
The Otago rugby team takes to Carisbrook on Saturday for the first time in 1989 for the inaugural Cairns Series match against Canada. It's a match which could signal a new era in local rugby, with Otago's initiative being responsible for the birth of the six-team international series.
In past seasons, Otago players have been at a disadvantage, not having the exposure enjoyed by their rivals from Auckland, Wellington and Canterbury, who have often gained the approval of the All Black selectors in the South Pacific Series. But today, Otago's hopefuls are now able to press their claims in the new Cairns Series against Canada and two leading Argentinian teams, Otago going to Argentina a week after Saturday's clash. It's a move which Otago coach Laurie says is of the utmost importance to his squad, thanks to a lot of hard work from key members of the Otago administration.
It's been tremendous. It was first mooted about 3 years ago that we should be doing something like this, and over the last 12 months, John Hornbrook in particular, and Dave Johnson and Jared Simmons have really given this some impetus, and they're the ones that have made it work.
And Mains is well aware of Canada's forward strength, which was so evident at Carisbrook in the World Cup outing against Ireland 2 years ago.
They're very tough physically, and I sort of rated them of the teams that I saw here in the World Cup as probably the team that was most improved from the image that I had of their rugby. I thought they played splendidly here at Carisbrook and with an ounce of luck could have beaten Ireland.
Canadian rugby gained a lot from that season, and the game there has progressed since then, according to the new captain Roy Radu, a vigorous flanker who spent a year in the Otago boys' high first 15 in his youth. Today, he was back at school preparing for the Otago clash, something that he sees as most important for the future of the game back home.
Believe it or not, we feel that if we can beat Otago on Saturday, it's going to mean more for Canadian rugby than our first World Cup win against Tonga, which was quite something itself.
The match will be especially significant for outstanding Otago halfback Dean Kenny, who will be making his 100th appearance in an Otago jersey. Since his debut in 1981, Otago rugby has largely revolved around the talents of Kenny, and for him, it'll be a special occasion.
To me, it's quite an honour, and I never thought that I'd actually get to 100 when you look back on your debut. It's a long time.
He's been had a tremendous influence on Otago rugby, and of all of the players that have reached 100 games, I suppose his has been the rockiest path.
But whether the Cairns Series is a success will depend on how many people go through the turnstiles on Saturday. Quite simply, the series must be financially viable for a sponsor in future years, and that almost depends entirely on how the public accept this latest addition to the rugby calendar.
And we wouldn't miss it for anything. And the curtain raiser on Saturday is Otago University's playing Lincoln. Now we'll have a look at today's 3 o'clock temperatures as we go into the Easter break. Half Moon Bay was overcast with 16 degrees. Invercargill, rain and 15 degrees. A high tomorrow of 17. Gore was overcast with 21. Balclutha, sunny and 19. It was cloudy in Dunedin and 14 degrees at 3 o'clock with a high tomorrow of 18 degrees. Palmerston sunny and 17. Oamaru with 16 degrees. Ranfurly had 20. Lumsden had 18 degrees. Queenstown cloudy and 17. Wanaka cloudy and 16. The high again in Alexandra of 22 degrees. It was overcast in Te Anau and 17. Have a great Easter, whatever you're doing. Make sure it's a safe and happy one. Do take care on the roads. And we'll be back on Tuesday for our last week on Network One. Good night.